So hello and welcome to the clinic all about anxiety. I am Anisa and I am a positive parenting coach. I'm a mentor, I'm a speaker, but above all, I'm a champion of you and your families and your children and helping you to raise happy and confident young people, no matter what the challenges that they are going through. I think it's also important for you to know that I'm a mum myself. So I have a 16-year-old who has gone through crippling anxiety. We've gone through self-harm, we've gone through suicidal thoughts, and an autism diagnosis. So I'm very much with you during the process of parenting and what's going on. I'm pleased to report we are coming out of the other side of that. So there is hope and there is glimmers at the lights at the end of the tunnel and all the rest of it. My background, for those of you who are listening to me for the first time, is education and teaching. I was a deputy head of operations before, well, for too many years. If I tell you how many years I've been in teaching, it'll make me feel really old, so I'm not going to. But anyway, just let's know it's been decades. Before I moved my family up from Surrey to Yorkshire, and the rest, as I say, is history. I retrained, did lots of other bits and pieces to do the job that I'm doing today. So in the chat box, can you let me know whereabouts in the country you're tuning in from? I know I can see a friendly face who I know literally is down the road from me. I can see other friendly faces of people who I know are local, sort of Bradford, York, excellent, Bradford, Harrogate, Skipton, Ilkley, nice. So again, if you're listening through on the recording, ping me an email and let me know where you're tuning in from. Gosh, it looks like Yorkshire is very, very nicely represented. So I am in Ilkley in West Yorkshire, right on the North Yorkshire border. And I love it here, absolutely love it, although we could do with the sun coming out today. So today we're going to be exploring anxiety. I'm going to be talking probably for the next 20-ish minutes. And then at the end, I'd like you to share in the chat box what your takeaway from today is, because we're busy people, and absolutely take notes, absolutely write down ideas and light bulb moments that might strike. But actually, if you commit to doing one thing, by the end of this talk, you're more likely to do it, because, with all the will in the world, if we have a list of 10 things that we think are really good ideas, the chances of us doing any of them are too much because it's just too overwhelming. So I'm going to get you to commit to doing one thing or doing some further research on something. So let's have a little think about what is anxiety. I'm pretty sure all of us in some way, shape or form have experienced anxiety, whether it's for ourselves or whether it's with our children. It could be something as simple as, not simple, but job interviews, going for your driving test, starting something new for the first time. So we've all been through anxious, worrying, fearful even moments. And I think anxiety does present a lot like fear, but it's more than that. And I think it is very much more complex. And I'm going to read you the definition that I found that I really liked about anxiety. So it says, anxiety is defined as a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease about something with an uncertain outcome. And what I find with quite a lot of the clients that I work with, especially the young people, is that they've already put themselves 7 steps ahead into the worst case scenario, and I have to try and bring them back to being in the here and the now in order to try and work out actually whether that worst case scenario is likely to happen, might happen. Do we need a contingency plan just in case it is going to happen? Or actually, can we just take a deep breath and say, let's just run our course and see where life takes us? So I think, it's with that uncertain outcome, but we quite often don't help ourselves when we are anxious because we are putting ourselves into a situation which is unknown in our head. And our head will always go to the worst case scenario because our brain wants to keep us safe. I think the anxiety footprint is large. It's bigger than worry, it's bigger than fear, which can make it interesting to navigate, especially interesting to navigate a child who is perhaps lacking in self-esteem, lacking in confidence, which is then showing up as anxiety. I think my feeling very strongly is that parents are the key to success when you are working with a child with anxiety, because you are their role model, you are their safety net, you are their their zone where they can be comfortable, where they can push boundaries. And that is exactly the same, because I know we've got some absolutely wonderful foster carers on this call today, and it's the same for you. You are creating an environment where that young person trusts you and can be themselves, but also that means that they are then pushing the boundaries with anxiety. So let's have a think about how anxiety might be showing up in your homes. So if any of these resonate, either give me an emoji, a thumbs up, or let me know in the chat box. Constant worrying. Does that show up in your house? Catastrophizing. My daughter is very, very good at catastrophizing, even though we've worked our way through the anxiety cycle and all the rest of it. Catastrophizing is her favorite thing to do. Perfectionism. I think I'm a bit guilty of that one. Everything has to be, yeah, sorry, everyone. What ifs? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this goes on? What if this person says this? What if I fall in a hole? There are no holes where you're going. So what ifs? Excessive avoidance. This one is quite a key one that I see quite a lot, especially with the parents and the young people that I work with, is they just don't put themselves into a situation where they are going to feel uncomfortable or where the anxiety might present itself, and therefore they're making their comfort zone really, really tiny and claustrophobic. Have they got social fearfulness, irritability, anything else that I might have missed? In fact, someone last time said something really interesting, and I thought, I'll write that down. And that was the end of that thought. Perimenopause has got a lot to answer for. So if you think of other ways that anxiety might be showing up for you and your young person, let me know. As I said, you can directly message me. And if you're listening to this on the replay, please feel free to send me an email. So, I think what's interesting about anxiety is it can really have a long-term effect on you as the parent or the carer, and then your young person, because as I was explaining before, their comfort zone gets really, really small. So then they're not taking opportunities to go to a friend's party, to try a new club, to wear a different style of clothing, by fear of being judgments or the what ifs or the perfectionisms or the rest of it. Oh, someone's mentioned physical symptoms. Yes, I'm going to literally write that down now, because that was my mistake before. Physical symptoms. So thank you for that reminder. So lots of tummy aches, possibly headaches, feeling of uneasiness and nausea. Hand tingles is sometimes one of them. So I think it's really important that we say to our children, it's okay to feel these things. It is. Emotions are healthy. Emotions are meant to be felt. Emotions are there to give us warning signs. They're there to help us identify joy. So emotions are a good thing. But what we also need to say to our young person is what you're experiencing now normal in this circumstance, or is it something that actually we can look at from a different way? We can reframe, we can do something that will help you to feel better, because actually it is normal to feel a bit nervous to go into a party when there's lots of stuff going on. It's normal to feel nervous in the build up to an exam. These are normal emotions and behaviors and feelings that actually, that's where a conversation comes in to say, this is normal, this is okay, what are we then going to do about it? I think there are some definite stumbling blocks when we are looking at anxiety and how we can help our young people. I think one of those is very simply us being the parent or the carer to our children, because that relationship comes with lots of other stuff that goes on with it. And sometimes they don't want to trust us with the information because they think it might worry us. Sometimes it might be because we're experiencing anxiety ourselves and our children don't want to worry us. So that can play a part. Sometimes, especially with older children, perhaps tweens and teens, it might be that they just don't let you in as often as perhaps a toddler or a younger child does, because they wear their heart on their sleeve. I know in my case, this was very, very much what was coming up, is they resisted my input. Well, you don't know what it's like to be me. You've never experienced this. You've not grown up when we've grown up. You know, this is blah, 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 blah. And so it's, you know, they resist your input because they don't feel that you're down with the kids or that you know enough and all the rest of it. Or also because they feel that they're being controlled. And I think that's another one. And then stumbling blocks to help can also be just avoiding the challenge. I think what we also need to be mindful of more than anything is that when our child is experiencing change, there's a change cycle, an emotional change cycle. I'm sure it's got an official term, which I've got absolutely no idea what it is right at this moment. No, I do. I think it is just called the emotional change cycle. And it's like an upside down bell curve or like a skateboard ramp. And so our kids are going in on one side of it. They're experiencing their anxiety at the bottom. And instead of pushing through or learning a strategy or whatever to come out the other side of the change cycle, they are just sitting in that little pit of despair at the bottom, and then they're reversing themselves back out again. And so sometimes just talking to your child about that change cycle, that emotional thing, how we have to actually sometimes sit in the pit of despair. Actually, I think in the emotional change cycle, they call it the valley. But for me, a valley is too big. So let's make it a pit, which is a little bit smaller, a little bit more backwards and forwards on our skateboard. But ultimately, we want them to come out the other side having learned a new skill, stretch their comfort zone a little bit. We don't want them going into the panic zone. So it's comfort zone, stretch zone, panic zone. And the panic zone is where the anxiety hits. Let's bring them back to the stretch zone so they can experience new things. The other thing I want to mention here is about secondary behavior. So we might say to our child, I don't know, we're going out for a meal. That's one in our household, that my daughter doesn't like going to new places like restaurants and things like that. And so rather than identifying that's anxiety at play and that she's feeling worried and she's feeling nervous and all the rest of it, she will start a secondary behavior. So she might answer back, she might be rude, she might cry, she might do something else, which is, here we are on our parenting pathway, here she is on her lane of traffic, and she's dragging me over onto her lane because she doesn't quite know how to deal with the emotion, she doesn't know how to identify it, and then we go off on a side street because we're then dealing with the secondary emotion rather than going, right, I can see you're upset. I understand that you're worried about going out, in this example, to a restaurant. What can we do to help you? Can we show you what the restaurant looks like on the bring it up on Google? Can we, whatever, walk past it before we actually visit it? You know, there are lots of things we can do to help that process. So be aware of thinking through, is it a secondary behavior that's taking me out of my parenting lane onto a side street? Can I swing them back and deal with what's going on and then address the anxiety when everything's calmed down? Because ultimately, when anxiety is playing its part, it's when the brain is in primitive mode. Now, I asked for a brain for Christmas. I might be the only person on the planet who asked for a brain for Christmas, but I love my brain, and well, it's even got insides. It's fab. But anyway, that's not the point. So your primitive brain is down here at the base. And in fact, I was working with, it's made me giggle. I was working with a 7-year-old over half term, and I was trying to explain the primitive brain concept to him. And we were looking at the brain, and we were looking, goes, oh, it's like the brain butt. And I was like, yeah, you know what? If that's what it takes to remember it, it's the brain butt. But your primitive brain keeps you safe. It's the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when you're in anxiety, you are definitely in one of those: fight, flight, or freeze, or your child is. And when they're in that brain, they're not going to then come back to their thinking brain, which is the bit we need them to be in. And so it's just worth being aware of that. So when you're talking to them in their highly anxious state, they're probably not hearing you because they're in the primitive brain. 3 tips to get out of the primitive brain: positive activity, positive interaction, positive thinking. The easiest one to implement is probably a positive activity, moving their attention somewhere else. Asking them to think positive thoughts will probably get you attacked. So I don't think that's a good one to use in the moment, but it's certainly a good one to swing back to once everything has calmed down. Affirming words, asking them to breathe, all those kind of things are really good ideas as well. Okay. Time is ticking along. So strategies. I love a good strategy, but I'm going to give you a heads up from the voice of experience for strategies that don't work. So listen in. When you tell somebody who's in a highly anxious state, oh, just stop thinking about it. Don't think about being anxious. What's going to happen in that situation? So if I said to you right now, don't think about a red sheep, what's the first thing you're thinking of? And I do hope you're all thinking about red sheep right now. But so that's the concept. As soon as someone tells us to breathe, as soon as someone tells us to not think about something, that's all we can think about, and it's not calming at all. I think another one here, which is a strategy that doesn't help with anxiety, is jumping in with advice. Well, I would do this, and have you tried that? And oh my goodness, this and this and this. And all that does is send that primitive brain into alarm mode, and you will not get very far. Allowing your young person to avoid the fear. I think that is a strategy to keep them safe, to stop the anxiety. We stop allowing them to stretch their comfort zone, and therefore the fear, the anxiety just continues to grow. And then giving excess reassurance. Now, this is a really interesting one because it's done from such a good place. You will be okay. Everything's going to be fine. You are a wonderful child. You are brave. You are courageous. You know, this excess reassurance is actually giving your child the message that there's something wrong with them. Well, mum doesn't think that that is, so she's just going to give me all of this information, which is too much. Again, they're in their primitive brain. They can't hear it. Absolutely give them reassurance when everyone's calmed down and they're not seeing red, but it's not the first strategy I would go in with. So you've listened to me for a while. I guess this is the important bit that you want. What actually works? Now, this is going to be different for every family, for every child. Something might work one day and it doesn't work the next. All I would say to you is to get that emotional change cycle moving. So when we've gone in on our skateboard, we've just listened to this really interesting talk that Anisa's given, and she knows her stuff. Well, I think she knows her stuff. And then in we go on our skateboard to the bottom of that ramp, and we're sitting there on the skateboard and we're really trying something that Anisa's taught us to do, and it's just not working. What normally happens at this point is you don't give it enough time to embed. You'll use it once, it doesn't work, so you'll reverse. You'll use it once and you think, I'm not going to tweak that, and you reverse. What I want you to do is to take the strategy and make it your own for your child. So it might be that you sit in that pit of despair, going backwards and forwards for a bit, and being uncomfortable trying to help your child with this new strategy. And it might take them a week, it might take them 24 hours, it might take them 6 months. If it takes them 6 months, I probably would move on to another strategy. But it might take more time than you are comfortable sitting there. But ultimately, we then want you to come out on the other side, having gained a new skill, having empowered your child to try something different to whatever. And that's what we're aiming for. So here goes. Here's my list, and I will try and do justice to everything I've got on here. One thing I love to talk about is connection before correction. So how can we connect with our children before we get to the point where the anxiety is hit and we have to correct, not as in telling them off, but correct their course in what's happening to them? So can we identify signs, triggers, body language, words they use, which is a sign that they're going down the route of anxiety? And can we put connection in before they get to that point so that we don't actually then have to correct the course at the end? So we're stepping in 3 steps before rather than 7 steps after it's actually happened. This one's quite a nice one, and it works really nicely. Well, I think maybe not for the little ones, but for most children, is giving anxiety a name and talking back to it. You know, call it Bob, call it Peppa Pig, call it what you want, but actually it's giving it a persona outside of the child. So actually the anxiety is happening to your child. It is not your child. So actually, oh, you know, Bob's reared his head again. Sorry if anyone's name on this call is Bob. You know, Bob's reared his head again. What are we going to do? What do we need to do? Do we need to go to our calm down box? Do we need to have a regulation strategy? What do we need to do? But naming it takes it away from your child, as I say, and rather than it being a problem that they are experiencing. The other thing I would say here is be very careful of using labels. So someone on their questionnaire very kindly said that their child is shy. Now, this parent did not give that child the label, but it stuck in my mind as a reminder for me to tell you, is that if we say they're shy, to make it better in a social situation, all we're telling your child's brain is that they're shy, and then the brain doesn't know how to differentiate between shyness and just taking a bit of time to warm up and all the rest of it. So if we're labeling our child as anxious in front of other people, your child's brain's going, well, I'm anxious, oh gosh. And then the brain looks for all of the evidence why your child is anxious to prove that it is correct. So it's much better to say, you know what, just take a little bit of time to warm up. Give us 5 minutes or whatever you feel is appropriate for your child. Teaming up with your child and giving anxiety a code name or a name that comes up. Well, I'll give you an example. So my daughter, when her anxiety comes out, she talks a lot. I mean, literally verbal diarrhea. It all just comes out, it comes out, it comes out, and she just can't stop herself. And so we tried telling her off, we tried shouting at her, we tried reasoning with her, we tried so many things. And in the end, we decided to use the code name bananas, because I'm allergic to bananas, my husband doesn't like bananas, and my daughter would eat a banana, but they're not really in our house. So it's not a word within our house that is very much used. And so she would be talking. And instead of me giving anxiety a name or saying, gosh, are you feeling a bit anxious right now? I would just say to her, bananas. And at that point, she'd be like, oh, okay, I know what bananas means, because we talked about what bananas means. We talked about what she maybe could do once she heard the word bananas, and it would just calm her down. But it also meant in social situations, it was a bit of a secret language which we had that meant nothing to anybody else. So if they heard me saying to my child bananas, it wouldn't mean anything to them. And so that would be okay. So as I say, it was our little secret code. So that one works quite nicely. Reframing their negative thinking. So they're really anxious, they're really worried. What they're doing is they're looking at my hand moisturizer from this side. What I want them to do is to have a perspective, to look at it from the other side. And so how can we reframe that thought? Because they are only looking at that problem, that issue, that worry from one side. Actually, we need to give them a bit of a 360-degree view of, well, what if it doesn't happen? What if this happens instead? What if we thought about it this way? What if Granny got involved and she was telling us how to X, Y, and Z in this situation? What might Granny say? And so actually reframing and looking at it from a different angle is a really nice one. It's actually a nice concept that with kids, because you can literally get a soft toy, or you can get a chair, or you can sit at the table. You say, just move one seat around the table and see what perspective you've got from that side of things. Praise is a really underutilized tool with parenting. And in fact, I must have had 3 or 4 conversations in the last 2 weeks with parents about, well, why should I praise my child for just doing what they're meant to be doing? Because they're not adults. You need to praise them for their efforts. You need to praise them for the progress that they're making. You need to praise them for something that they didn't do quite as badly as yesterday as they did today. You know, they need to hear that they're making progress, and they need to hear it because developmentally they are not adults. They're little people. Even like my daughter at 16, she's still little. She's still learning her ways. The brain doesn't fully develop until you're 24. And so actually praise, use it kindly, use it wisely, but it can be a really good tool for helping with anxiety. I'm just like, what's the time? Oh my goodness me, 2 minutes. Right. Okay. One more. I talked a lot about their comfort zone. So I've talked about the comfort zone, I've talked about the stretch zone, and I've talked about the panic zone. We don't want a panic zone. Nobody needs a panic zone in their life. However, if your child's comfort zone is really, really small, I want you to imagine that their comfort zone is like inside a balloon, or yeah, maybe a balloon is better rather than a bubble. Because what I want them to be able to realize is actually they can push against the balloon and it stretches. By that, just them maybe going into something and taking a step without holding your hand, that's a really big deal. And that's them stepping into their stretch zone. And that's what I want to encourage our kids to do, is to step into the stretch zone without it going into the panic zone. And that might be, as I said, as simple as taking a step into something that they've not done before without holding your hand or clinging onto your leg, or it might be something else for your child. Okay, I could quite literally talk about this subject for hours. I say that at every session because I am passionate about what I do, and I'm passionate about helping you and your young people. So tell me something that has been a takeaway for you. Tell me something that has been an aha moment. Tell me something that you want to go away and think about. Now I can see someone's asked a question. How can you help them verbalize what they're feeling and identify why they might be feeling it, and when they're young? Let me just make sure. I think when they're younger, so I would say sort of 8, 9 down, I would use books a lot and stories and identifying emotions. And I would also use lots of talking about emotions in your day-to-day life. So, oh, I'm feeling a bit frustrated now. Oh gosh, that made me a bit worried. It has to be age appropriate, but our children put us on pedestals. And so you actually need to show your child that actually you're feeling these feelings as well, and feelings are normal. And so that's sort of where I would go with that. Yeah, there's lots more I could say. But for those of you who are local to Ilkley, local to West Yorkshire, local to me, I'm actually doing an in-person talk next week, which is very, very exciting. I've not done it other than going to the lovely Bradford foster carers to do some in-person talks. I've not actually hosted one myself. And so next week at the Clark Foley Centre in Ilkley, I am going to be doing 2 talks, one at lunchtime and one in the evening, all about emotions. So if that's something that appeals to you, spread the word. There will be some information that comes out in the email that I send out with the replay. So have a look out for that. The next clinic is actually a new topic, one that I've not covered before. So it's at the end of April. It's a bit of a long wait, just due to where Easter is this year. It's the last Tuesday of April. I'm going to make up the date and get it wrong. Anyway, it's the last Tuesday of April, and it's all about friends. So that's a different one. So if you want to drop in and see that one, that would be great. So let's see what your takeaways were from today. So we've got code names. I love that one. Strategies that do and don't work. Encouraging to see things from a different angle. Secondary behavior and the reasons for it leading to try and find ways out. Also that things that they don't work. Excellent strategies that work. And someone saying that they really like the idea of the skateboard park and in that pit and anger. So fabulous. Thank you so much all for your time. I've run 1 minute over today. If you're watching this on the replay and you've got some takeaways or you've got some questions, please do reach out. Otherwise, I really do hope our paths will cross again in the not too distant future.